What's something that people get wrong about you?
They think I'm grumpy all of the time, and I'm only grumpy most of the time. There are some times I'm not grumpy. Now is not one of those times. I think I pay more attention now, not only to issues of extraordinary level of income and wealth inequality in general. And I didn't break it down to look at the racial disparities. The average black family owns 1/10 the wealth of the average white family. You look at educational disparities. African American kids leaving school much more deeply in debt than white kids. I look now at disparity, racial disparity within the broad context of disparities in this country. We've got to focus on both. It's another barrier that's broken down. And the goal of what politics in America should be is to break down those barriers, to elect people, whether they're women, whether they're men, whether they're gay, whether they're straight, whether they're old, whether they're young. Elect the best candidates, the candidates who speak to your needs. Thinking about bad things before I go to sleep and worrying and not being able to sleep enough. I stop reading the newspapers before I go to sleep. I work with actually Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina to get into the Affordable Care Act a $12 billion increase in funding, that's a lot of money, to expand community health centers. Community health centers provide not only primary health care, but dental care, mental health counseling, and low-cost prescription drugs. 9 million people now have access to health care as a result of that legislation. So that's somewhat more than one person. All the time. There was a debate within our office. We introduced a Medicare for All single-payer program. And there was a debate, there was a discussion. Is reproductive health part of it? What about abortion? If you now say that every woman in the country should get government paid for abortion, aren't you going to listen even more opposition? And some people say, God, we're trying to do enough right now, guarantee health care to all people. Why do you want to inject the abortion issue in there? But we feel that reproductive rights and a woman's right to control her own body, that is something that could not be put into this legislation, and it is there. Good question. Not that your other questions weren't good, but this is a particularly good question. All right, here's the story. In the last 45 years, think about it, last 45 years, you've heard a lot of great speeches, you've heard good legislation, you've heard great party platforms, you've heard all kinds of people saying all kinds of wonderful things, right? And yet today, how does it happen that over the last 45 years, the average American worker is earning in real inflation accounted for dollars exactly the same as he or she did 45 years ago? How does that happen? A lot of great speeches and a lot of great legislation, Why does that happen? And the answer is something that very few people talk about. To bring about real change, you need the mass mobilization of millions of people at the grassroots level to stand up and fight for justice. So that's the answer to your question. The answer to your question is that a lot of good people, honest people, well-intentioned people said, you elect me and I'm going to do this. And the result is the rich get much richer and we have veterans sleeping out on the street. Starstruck is not my thing. I will tell you something though, where I do get starstruck, but it's not from stars. I was in California last month in Los Angeles, and a group put on a conference on immigration. And I saw two young girls, I don't know, they were 16 or 17 years of age, and they talked about what it is like to be undocumented and what they're trying to do to help their families. I was starstruck by their courage and their beauty and their decency. I don't let Hollywood decide on that. I don't get enough. I'd like to get 8 hours, but...
What's typical?
5.
We'll do a few more dumb ones and then go back.
I thought these were your smart ones. Like everybody else that I know, almost everybody else, I use my share of vulgarity, but I try not to use it in front of a TV camera. I think centrism ultimately is an ideology which is pushed by the big money interests, which says, hey, we're rich, we're powerful, we're making zillions of dollars in profit, the status quo is working great for us. You want some modest little changes over here, fine, we can do that, but do not challenge our wealth, do not challenge our power. Being Jewish, I get hit every now and then with anti-Semitism. I respond with anger, and you respond by appreciating what it is, to understand that there are people, you know, in the African American community, in the Latino community, in the gay community, women, who are discriminated against every day. When you are Bernie Sanders, you get a lot of criticism from a lot of people, and it's not just from Republicans, it's not just from Wall Street or the insurance companies, it's from, you know, establishment Democrats as well. So, you want to hear a record? I can go on and on. It's a pretty strong record. It is greatly expanding community health centers in this country. It's writing perhaps the most significant veterans piece of legislation. It is doing something really interesting. As part of the Dodd-Frank bill, we got language in it which called for an audit of the Fed. And you know what we learned? You know, when people talk about the Wall Street bailout, what we discovered is that we're $14 trillion of almost zero interest loans going to not only major banks in America, but corporations as well, and central banks all over the world. That is a massive giveaway. That amendment reminds people of the degree to which the United States Congress and the Fed bailed out the wealthiest people and the largest corporations in America. A very important amendment. My first paying job was delivering newspapers in Brooklyn. Well, I love my wife. As a matter of fact, she is my best friend and a good advisor to me. And one of the things that's very painful about politics is that it is not good enough in the year 2019 to attack the candidate. I'm attacked every day, and I can live with that. But they go after your wife, you know, they go after your family, lies, lies, and lies. And, you know, that hurts me. And I apologize to her, and I feel badly that she has to get dragged into this crap. No, that's not the way I look at it. No, it's not that if elected president, we're only going to accomplish one thing. I don't look at politics like that. I look at a political movement in this country which transforms this nation. None of the ideas that I talk about, none of that stuff is radical. None of that stuff is not supported by a majority of the American people. Our job is not just to win the Democratic nomination. It is not just to defeat Donald Trump, the worst president, most dangerous president in modern American history. Our job is to transform this country. So it's not just one thing. You know, it's not combating climate change or Medicare for all. It is doing all of those things, and we can do them because that is what the American people want. No, the history of real change in America, whether it is the civil rights movement, the labor movement, the women's movement, the gay movement, it never came down from a member of Congress or a president saying, you know what, I think that gay people have the right to be married. Hey, that's a great idea. Let's write that bill. That's not the way it happened. Or I think that we should end segregation in America and African Americans should have the right to vote in Mississippi. It doesn't happen that way. It is absurd that so few have so much and so many have so little. So to me, you know, that's the way I look at politics. That's the way I look at change. And that's what we're trying to bring about. Well, I understand that. You know, I understand that. But, you know, I think our goal, clearly, as I mentioned earlier ago, is to end discrimination in America. We have made progress. 25 years ago, you know how many United States senators were women? 1. Well, today you have over 20. That's progress. And the day will come and must come, and I will do everything I can to make it come, where women have full representation in the Senate, in the House, governors, everything else. We're making progress. We have much more to do, and that's true for the African American community, the Latino community, the gay community. All communities deserve to have a place at the table. Don't let it. We try to keep that video away from him. He's a beautiful kid. You know, one of the regrets about being on the campaign trail is you don't have enough time for your kids or your grandchildren. I have 7 beautiful grandchildren, 4 great kids. And I wish I had more time for them. When I was a young man, I was a fairly good basketball player. I was a pretty good runner. When I can, I like to play ball. Now I am reduced to playing with 8-year-olds who sometimes beat me, but I'm hanging in.